Well, I tell you, I got to get your reaction if I can before we jump into some of these other stories. I'm sure you saw the news about Vice President Joe Biden. You know, he did the right thing. He said, hey, that Mike Pence, he's a decent guy. Then he gets beat on the head by the progressive left, and he has to backtrack, calling Pence a decent guy. Now, apparently, Governor Steve Bullock is saying the exact same thing. He was asked in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 2 days ago, hey, is Vice President Pence a decent guy? And Governor Steve Bullock wouldn't even say if Vice President Pence is a decent guy. And my reaction is this how low we have sunk with our political discourse in this country? What's your reaction? You probably know Vice President Pence better than anybody out there.
Well, I've known him for a very long time, and I'll tell you, it is sad, and it is disappointing that people who have political differences on policy can't see the decency in their fellow public servants or their neighbors, and it does say a lot about where we have gotten to as a country. And it is sad because Vice President Pence is a decent man, and I'm sure that your governor and others, and I know that Vice President Biden is a decent person. Even though we have political disagreements, we need to be able to see the humanity and the decency in others despite those differences. And it's just a sad commentary about where the progressive left has gone, that they cannot even see decency in someone whom they may happen to disagree with on policy.
Yeah, I thought it was also quite ironic because earlier this week we were talking about this Atlantic magazine report that showed that the most politically intolerant people in the country were actually in the liberal Hillary Clinton counties. That actually the most tolerant people were in places like Jordan, Montana, and Winnett, Montana, rural red Trump country, compared to the blue parts of the state.
It's not surprising that the people who preach and beg for tolerance and understanding are the least tolerant and understanding people to any of those who disagree with them. We've seen this on so many occasions, whether it's in terms of the women's movement, in terms of whether you have minority groups of people who step out of what they're supposed to vote for and actually show their support for another political view, that they get demonized, they get attacked. And that their thoughts suddenly don't matter, their trials, their stories don't matter if you don't think the exact right thing.
It's kind of funny. I've even seen it here with this radio show because we hear from more conservative folks because it's talk radio. This is their one chance to be heard compared to the rest of the establishment media. And some of my Democrat friends say, oh, well, the consultants tell me I shouldn't go on talk radio. And then when they don't win their primary election or their general election the next year, now they're coming back to me saying, hey, yeah, I'll come on your show. I'm not listening to those consultants anymore. So I thought that's kind of funny. But what's your message going to be when you speak in Bozeman here coming up very soon?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixture. Obviously, I've just now recently taken a new position with the senior position with the president's reelection effort. So we'll be talking about, obviously, the need for everybody to get out and help us make sure that there are 4 more years of President Trump's strong leadership, and also we'll share a few stories probably from the original 2016 campaign trail, and in the first year in office when I had the privilege of serving as a special assistant to the president and press secretary to the vice president. So I know a lot of people like to know some of the inside stories, and so we'll share a few of those as well as get into some of the great things that are going on.
Any you can share with us, maybe just a preview today. I know one of the questions you probably get a lot is, it seems like, at least from a personal background, Vice President Pence and President Trump are 2 completely different people, but yet they seem to work really well together. It seems to be a very good balance in the administration, but they do seem like 2 completely different people.
Well, and in a way they are. Their backgrounds are different as well, but that's what I think makes them such a strong team. And it's not the first time that America has seen this. And one of the things that we'll talk about, on Saturday night is the fact, and I still remember this very much. It was a few days before the inauguration back in January of 2017, and the then Vice President-elect was doing some interviews with some of the national reporters and things, and one of them asked him who he thought he would most model his vice presidency after, and they were expecting him to say Vice President Cheney or maybe even Vice President Quayle because he was from Indiana as well, and the then Vice President-elect said, well, I would pattern it after George H.W. Bush. And the reporter immediately said, oh, because he went on to be elected president. And he said, no, because the vice presidency is entirely defined by the president, and we had an outsider president who ran against the system, ran against the mainstream Republican thinking at the time. His name was Ronald Reagan. They also attacked him because they thought he was going to start a world war. He was ill-informed. He wasn't prepared. But he picked in a vice president at the time, someone who knew a lot about how Washington works and how things got done. And that's what made them such a powerful team. And I think it really just said a lot to, the kind of president that Donald Trump is, but it also tells you a lot about the vice president in that he understands that his job has always been, number one, first and foremost, to support the president and his oath to the Constitution.
Well, I firmly believe you can't lead if you also can't follow. You know, they do this in military training where, okay, hey, now you're in charge. Now you're the platoon leader. And now you're not in charge. And every now and then you'll get the kid that's like, oh, well, if I'm not in charge, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to work as hard. And I think that's a true test of character and just shows Vice President Pence's character that it's not about him, it's about the country.
No, absolutely. And then we'll also get into some of the fun things. You know, one of the things that, I often get asked about is, well, what's it like to ride aboard Air Force One or Air Force Two? And what people don't realize is that, they charge us for the food that we eat as government employees, so the taxpayers don't pay for that. So every time you step on board, you get charged, and you'll get about a month later, you'll get a bill for about $7 or $8 or $10, for a sandwich you had when you were on the plane, a month and a half ago. So there's lots of little things that we, that we can get into. I know a lot of people like some of those behind-the-scene looks that you don't ever actually think about, but little things. I would like to share some of those questions.
So it's not going to be all just pitchforks and politics. There's going to be some fun at this Lincoln-Reagan dinner as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that we love to say, and I tell often people, they ask you what your first reaction is when you walk into the West Wing, and in America, I always tell people.
I think we're losing the cell phone signal there from Marc Lotter. Mark, are you still with us? Yeah. I think.
Did you lose me?
Yeah, your cell phone was you're breaking up. We got you now.
Sorry, I'm actually at Penn Station in New York. I was just on Fox News this morning. I'm headed back to D.C., getting ready to board the train. But no, we'll talk about the fact that the West Wing is actually not as big as what you think it is. And, people have this view of it from the movies and TVs, but it's a lot smaller. But it was such an honor to walk in there for the first time.
Well, Marc Lotter, I know folks are looking forward to seeing you in Bozeman coming up here on the 16th, and we thank you for joining us here on Montana Talks. Hey, you're taking that mass transit. Maybe you should see if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will catch a ride with you, because
I doubt she.
She's got her 18 mile per gallon minivan to take her, I think. So, well, all right, Marc Lotter, great to talk with you. Look forward to seeing you back here in Montana. Thanks for being with us this morning on the show. I also think it's kind of funny. Here's Marc Lotter. He's got to pay $8 for his sandwich on Air Force Two, and Nancy Pelosi is raking up the booze bill for the rest of us. When she flies around, she gets her alcohol bought and paid for by you, the taxpayers. Oh man, it's just so funny, the double standard out there.